Hello, everyone. In this video lecture, we're going to be reviewing a body paragraph that could appear in a sample research essay. In the next interactive class, we're going to build on what we discuss in this video and the major themes in Lovecraft that are discussed in the associated analytical video on the color out of space in order to help prepare you for the final research essay in this course. A research essay is primarily focused, as we've said, on the, primary text that you've been assigned, whether it be The Color Out of Space or The Tempest. However, it incorporates secondary research. Now, these secondary sources can be commentaries or analyses of the text in question that you are going to use to supplement your own interpretations. Or they can be articles on psychology or philosophy, articles about history. You can use these texts to supplement your understanding of the work itself. Perhaps there's something about human psychology that you found interesting in a particular article that you've read or that you've done research on. You can bring that to bear. Perhaps there's some kind of mytho-historical issue, right? Like references to biblical or scriptural concepts that are being alluded to in the work that you don't know about yourself, but you recognize that there's something at work here, a kind of biblical allusion, and so you do research on that subject and look at commentaries and the like by other people in order to better understand what might be going on in the text. Likewise, you might note that, as I did with respect to David Hume and other philosophers and the color out of space, there's some aspect of philosophy, literature, history that you can bring to bear, or sociology, that you can bring to bear on this text in order to better understand it or to illuminate something in the story that will help you to interpret it. A research essay, again, and a research essay's body paragraphs as a result, are focused on that primary text, but they incorporate ideas from secondary sources. So let's take a look at an example of a body paragraph in a research essay that deals with the novel Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese. Now, in this novel, a young boy by the name of Saul is taken from his family living out in the brush and forced into the residential school system where he is abused. Saul finds some solace, some succor, and some relief and release in the form of hockey. And this game of hockey allows him to reclaim a sense of identity that he lost. He comes to, I suppose, experience a feeling of peace that he has lacked in the rest of his life. So, we begin with a topic sentence that develops a clear, specific main idea in this essay. Saul regains an element of control over his mental and emotional self thanks to playing hockey. So I'm going to argue in this paragraph that hockey allows him to gain control over, his internalities, which is so desperately important for him because everything about his actual physical circumstances, including, the violations committed against his own body, are out of his control. He finds this greater sense of control when he discovers that the sport allows him to awaken his talent for visualization. Upon first seeing the game when watching the older boys at the school play, he is immediately able to perceive both strategy and paths to success. Now I provide the block quotation from the original source. I can't explain how it came to me, but I could see not just the physical properties of the game and the action, but the intent. If a player could control the measure of space, he could control the game. The boys on the ice lurched and skimmed, oblivious to anything but the rubber sliding between their sticks, but I could see how a skater might move, where he might go to gain the advantage of space, how he might move the puck along to get it down the ice into the nest of twine. While the other boys' actions are coarse and unrefined as they lurch and skim along the ice, Saul elevates his observation. So here I'm interpreting the quotation and showing how it gives him this capacity for visualization. He does not get stuck on the level of the purely physical. He's always thinking about the game. Physical space becomes controllable because Saul's mind can visualize a movement before it happens. So he gains this kind of mental mastery over himself and thus over the physical because he can perceive things in a way that others can't. Moreover, his ability reconnects him to his ancestor, for Saul goes on to compare his hockey sight to the visualization gifts of his great-grandfather, Sebojisek. The world spoke to him. It told him where to look. The sport speaks to Saul and gives the vulnerable young boy a safe and happy place to look. The horrific images of abuse and cruelty that prevented Saul from using his inherited gifts are replaced with this comforting connection to his past. Hockey reawakens his natural talent for listening to the world. So thus far, we've had a standard body paragraph. I've had my main idea. I've given you a claim inside the body paragraph, then an example of that claim, and then I've analyzed it in the form of the evidence that I'm interpreting, and I present an analysis to show how it proves that claim. From there, I transition to the next example and do the same thing. Here, however, I'm going to bring to bear a secondary resource that discusses, well, athletes and their capacity to envision a new world by way of sports. What I have to do is, in my introduction to this study, discuss what the study is actually addressing, but also tie it back into the ideas I've already developed, yoking it into the argument that's building step by step, point by point in the paragraph. A study entitled Pre-Competitive Preparations in Professional Hockey demonstrates how mental imagery enables the studied athletes to create hope for successful results, as Saul does here. So I'm not leaving Saul alone. I'm not ignoring the text and then moving to something completely different. I'm introducing this new secondary source while also maintaining that tie to Saul and the original primary text. Visualization, a mental skill practiced in some forms by many athletes, is a method of an emotional and attentional control. It is a process where a player sees himself on a screen or in his mind's eye, consciously evoking and guiding thoughts in which he appears towards a positive goal. Every player who discussed visualization stressed that he would only visualize positive aspects of the game, for example, good passes or saves. Now, I'm going to return to the story and take the ideas from this secondary source and tie it into my analysis, using it to support the analysis I've already presented and develop it even further. While suffering with loneliness, isolation, and assimilation while in St. Jerome's residential school, Saul benefits tremendously from the capacity for positive visualization that sports grants him. Now, what I would want to do is develop this idea a little bit further, perhaps as described by Hogg and Keating. Being able to see and then later create beautiful movement in the game fills an emotional hole for the young narrator. He's given the freedom to visualize and create. This freedom offers a sense of control and achievement that is lacking in his school life. So, mental freedom, again, is the purpose of the analysis, right? It's what I've begun with, the main idea that I started this paragraph with. It's what I've carried through and developed in each of these different examples, how he can visualize freedom, or how he can visualize a future that allows his mind to be free while his body is not. And then I take this idea of the capacity for visualization granted to athletes by way of sports and integrate it into this argument, emphasizing the point or further substantiating the point by way of this allusion or by way of this reference. So when you're using secondary sources in your articles or in your research essays, make sure that you're using them to supplement and to build on the ideas that you are presenting, allowing you to perhaps present ideas and to further your ideas in ways that you couldn't otherwise. Also remember that in the context of a full research essay, you would require an in-text citation and a matching works cited entry for this secondary source. A few notes. With respect to the comments I've left beside this paragraph, this body paragraph models the way to build a body paragraph for your research essay. Notice how the heart of the body paragraph is the analysis and discussion of the primary source, the novel Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese. You have a proper introduction to the secondary source that ties the secondary source to the novel or to the story that you're discussing. The quotation from the secondary source is properly integrated and analyzed. It is in block quotation format because it takes up more than 4 lines. Here it's 5 lines of your essay. And then the in-text citation appears after the block quotation. There are no page numbers because the original article didn't have page numbers, and a block quotation never has quotation marks around it. Then you connect the secondary source's argument back to the primary source and the argument that you've been building thus far through the paragraph. We're going to practice this process when we look at The Color Out of Space in our next interactive class.